welcome to another episode of the Raj and Drew Show for entrepreneurs. And do we have a show for you today? We're going to talk about the elements that go into goal setting or the goal setting process for entrepreneurs. I'm so excited about this. Raj, goal setting is not something that has come naturally to me. It's something I've had to learn and I've had to discipline myself to do. And I've kind of got my way of doing goals, and it fits into one of these categories that we're going to talk about today. But Raj, how are you doing today? Let's start off there. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very, very well. I just came off a 3-day strategy workshop with one of my clients in Florida. It was a great session with 12 of their leaders. And in fact, we went through this process of goal setting, and you are going to hear some of it in our discussions today.
Perfect. I love those strategy sessions. Are so much fun. It's great getting the team in there. And when you talk about vision buy-in, right? So many times entrepreneurs think I've got to come up with the entire vision by myself in a lake house somewhere secluded. That's fine. You can do that. But if you have a team around you, get that team involved. They're going to add to the depth of that strategy. They're going to add a viewpoint that you don't have as the leader of that organization, and it's going to be richer. And then you're going to get automatic buy-in to that vision because they were part of the process. So that's great. A team of 12 in there. I mean, that's great. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic year for that organization. Wonderful.
Yes. And just to add to that, Drew, basically last year was the first year we went through this process.
Okay.
So last year they went back and they spent 1 year on this. And one of the focus for them was increasing their profitability, what we call is gross margin. That was the thing we prioritized. Everything else was great, but margin was one area which was not where it would like to be. So we did all the analysis and we said that. And Perfect. 12 months later, that margin went up by 2 percentage points. Nice. And everybody might think it is only 2 percentage points. So just to give you, for a small business, additional $4.5 million in bottom line.
Yeah.
That is huge for a small business. They are about 40 employee company.
Yeah.
And with some goal setting, a little bit of effort and everything else, they could go back and enhance it and really go back. And so that comes from the strategy side of it and setting up the right goals, the right metrics. And now 12 months later, you can see the benefit of it.
Yeah, that gross profit margin is huge. I mean, I've got some restaurants that I work with that were hitting 15%, but with food costs and fuel costs, they're down to 12%. That's devastating. You think that's just 3%. That's devastating for a small organization to see that kind of cut in their profit margin. And so, 2% increase. I mean, that's really big. And wonderful. Well, great. Well, they're obviously putting into practice what you've been teaching them this last year. So, and it just, we're talking about, putting a focus on goals today in this time. It's the time of the year that we're in right now, into January, beginning of February. People are, if they haven't defined their goals already, they're looking to define the goals for their organization and to get clarity around that. But where your focus goes, your energy flows, right? Someone smart said that one time.
Yes.
And I love that because it's so true. Wherever you're putting your focus, and even on the negative, if you put the focus on negative things in your organization, then you're probably your energy is going to wane. But if you can focus on what's going right and then get more things, more eyeballs on what we can get going right in our organization, you're probably going to have an organization that's energized, that still works on the opportunities, but is going in the right direction. So I love it. Okay, well, let's get into these goals. People Sure. clicked on this because they want to find out about goals. And I know you've got so much to say about goals. Now, probably most people out there have heard about SMART goals. They've whether they can recite the acronym, they've heard of this idea of SMART goals, but you're going to give us 3 different types of goals or goal setting processes today. Is that right?
Yes. So just to go back and get started, we'll use the traditional approach, which most of the people have heard. It is called the SMART goals.
Yeah.
And the next one is called FAST goals, FAST.
Okay.
And the third one, which is more the technology company, which is the most recent one in the past 5-6 years, are called OKRs, objectives and key result areas. So let's go back and look at all the three different scenarios and how the small business owners and entrepreneurs can really focus on and utilize which one they would like to utilize.
Yeah, let's do it. So you're going to start with SMART goals, kind of the one we're familiar with?
Yes, the SMART goals, just to go back and recap what it means is you want something to be very, very specific.
Okay.
Something that can be measurable.
Yeah.
Something that can be achievable. So it is realistic. Some people have achievable, some people have realistic.
Mm-hmm. So it's not a stretch goal. It's not a stretch goal.
Okay. Exactly. And then it has to be relevant. It has to be something that is relevant to you.
Okay.
And there should always be a timeline or a deadline, time bound.
Okay.
So a simple example for a SMART goal is I want to reach X number of sales by December 31st, 2023.
Yeah.
So that is a very, very specific goal. The X would be the dollar value, whatever it is you want to put. Somebody can go back and put a different number.
Yeah.
And for a long period of time, a lot of people put SMART goals. The biggest challenge with a lot of people is they just put a number around that based on their gut or whatever they feel, but they really don't go back and look at it from how can I go back and what are some of the assumptions that go into that.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. Somebody who has done $1 million in a small business in 22. They go back and say, you know what? I want to increase it by 50% and I want it to be 1.5 million in 23.
Yeah, I like that. Let's do it.
Yes. But if you go back and look at it, what are you going to do differently and what are some of the assumptions you do? That becomes the biggest piece of it. If they're not introducing any new products, if they're not introducing any new systems, if they're not introducing or going after any new customers, then where will that $500,000 come from? So that is the thought process where the strategy and the vision comes into picture.
Yeah.
So whenever you have goal settings, it has to have a vision attached to it. It has to be a strategy attached to it. The combination of that will really help.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it reminds me of one of my clients that they brought me in as a coach. They said, hey, I want to bring you in because I have this big goal of increasing sales by 20% year over year. Prior years, 6%, 3% increases in sales. So 20% was a big goal. And this was going to set them up for expanding their organization eventually. And they brought me in, and that was our specific goal, right? Increase sales by 20%. It's measurable. It was achievable. It's definitely doable. It was relevant to their organization, and it was time bound. It had to be done by the end of the year. And to your point, some of the things that we talked about in that initial meeting were, okay, are we opening new lines, new ways? It was a restaurant, so they decided they're going to do in-house delivery and ramp that up to increase sales. They were going to increase curbside pickup, curbside to go. They knew they were going to have a couple of price increases throughout the year on some of their products. And so through different mechanisms, they were able to project, and then they wanted to do some more catering. And so they were able to project in these 4 different avenues, we can grow, and then hope for as well, and a little hope in there, a little luck in there as well, that there are good market conditions throughout the year, and maybe there's some natural increase just based on it's a growing area, and so we should see more people come into the town, and through our advertising efforts we should be able to see more. And so we were able to reach that goal, but it would fit into that traditional mode. Now, one thing I would say is, if I could do it all over again, I probably would have broken the goal down into more quarterly type goals that would get some momentum in there, because I did find that once we got 3 months to 6 months, 5-6 months into the year, nobody was talking about the goal. I was the only one talking about the goal when I'd come and coach their leaders, because they're in the midst of the business, and my reputation is on the line here. If I can only succeed by one measure, if they hit the goal, right? I was successful. I was a great coach. If they hit this goal, it doesn't matter if everything else in their business is going great, but they come short on that goal. And so it was a focal point for me. We ended up doing 22 or 23% year over year. So we hit the goal, exceeded the goal. But I think that kind of leads into this next goal after SMART goals. There's the FAST goals.
Yes.
And
so
Talk about those, because I think that would have been more helpful in this situation with my
So I'll
client.
give you, see, yours is a great example, and I can go back and look at the same example from 3 different points of view to really elaborate on that piece of it.
Okay.
So when you go back and talk about fast goals,
Yeah.
the first F stands for frequently discussed.
Yes, that
So
was
the
the
goal
key.
should
Yeah.
be embedded into ongoing discussions. The progress has to be reviewed on a regular basis. The resources that are being allocated has to be discussed on a regular basis. Initiatives have to be prioritized. And the feedback loop has to be very, very fast. That is what, when we say frequently discussed, you're looking at it from 3 to 4 different aspects of it. And constantly the communication is happening it, and the feedback loop is providing us information.
Yeah.
And this will go back and help us to take the appropriate actions to meet those goals.
With the fast goals, do you find that you need to identify someone that's going to really own the goal or own the messaging of the goal? Or am I missing my understanding on that? Is that something you would do in an organization?
Yes. Every single time, basically, as soon as we have a strategy meeting, you have goals coming out of the strategy meeting. It can be 3, it can be 5, depending on the organization side. We can talk about that when we talk a little bit about the OKRs. But okay, whatever things comes, there should be one point of contact, point of owner.
Okay.
So perfect. There will be some at the entrepreneur level. So if they're business leader, the entrepreneur who is the president, CEO, whatever title they have, they will be owning some of the metrics. And then depending on the side of it, they will have certain teams, and each one of the leaders reporting to them will start owning something.
Yeah.
So in your case, basically in the restaurant, you were talking about is basically there were 4 different things that came in the restaurant. Mm-hmm. Basically, hey, we are doing curbside. We are doing catering.
Yeah.
So in those cases, what you have is within the organization, somebody is responsible for catering. And what is the objective and what is the metric that you're going to measure?
Yeah.
And who is going to look at the curbside and what is the effect of that? And that frequent discussion has to be there so that you can appropriately tweak it.
Yeah. Well, it's the old question, by who, by when, right?
Yes, exactly.
Who's going to own it and when is it going to be done? Which I think probably in your strategy meeting that you had with your client this last week, you probably did a lot of that. You know, who's going to own this and by when do they have to have it done? Because there are things within your organization that I was talking to somebody the other day about a sales cycle, and they're like, okay, I have no idea what you're talking about. But the idea being that if it takes 6 months to, you know, get a catering gig, then you want to have that first conversation as soon as possible, right? Because there's a timeline on that thing. So I'm going to have, you know, 50 conversations in January so that by July I can have 50 caterings, hopefully.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. So that is very piece of it. That is where the frequently discussed comes.
Yeah.
And the second part of it you said was basically the 20%, right? The year over year, the target was 20%. So if you look at the SMART goals, they came up with a number, and most of the time, if the incentive for the employees is based on that, they would like to sandbag it. So even if they have the stretch goal, it is more of not a stretch goal, but a regular goal. You know what? We can do the 20%.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because I want my bonus to be done, so I will sandbag my numbers. I don't want to put a higher number to reach. But if you go back in the FAST, the second A stands for ambitious.
Okay.
So there you want to have the goals to be a little bit of stretch. You should have a difficulty in achieving this. It should not be an impossible goal, but it should be something that can stretch us, but still achievable.
Well, and so with the ambitious, I can't remember if this is in the MIT article that talks about fast goals, which we can have the link in the description down there on that article. But there's a sweet spot where people are the most motivated with a goal. And I was very surprised. It's when they're at the 50% mark, when it can go 50-50. I don't remember where I read that, but it could go either way. And I remember having a very specific conversation with the COO of this restaurant that I was working with. And it was in July, August. I said, so, you know, what percentage do you think will hit this goal? And he said 50-50. I think it's pretty 50-50 that we could hit it. And but that, and I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know if I feel too good about that. And a year later, I read the statistic that 50-50 is actually a really good place where they think they can achieve it, but it's going to require a lot of effort. And that comes into that ambitious.
Exactly. And that is very, very true. The article clearly states that. And what happens is people in generally are motivated to go back and push themselves. And they're motivated with something that when they have a little bit of a likelihood of achieving that, their motivation is at the peak. If you go back and say they need to increase the profit by 20%, instead of 20%, let us say it is 80%.
Yeah.
Even before start, the chances probability is very small.
Yeah. There's no way. There's no way they're going to
even before
get excited.
They start.
Yeah.
And that is where it is. So that is where the objective should be difficult, ambitious, but not impossible to achieve. That is the A in the fast goals. And
okay.
the third piece of it is we need to be very, very specific. When we specific is, goal is great, but if we cannot translate that into concrete milestones and metrics, then people don't know that. So if your 20% goal, your example for basically the catering business of 6 months is very particular. So if I say, hey, by the end of first quarter, I need to get 10 more orders, then you know that it is not going to happen because the timeline is off.
Yeah.
The metric is very specific. I need 10 customers, but the timeline is off because their cycle time for a new client is 6 months.
Yeah.
So it becomes much more clear if you put it as end of June. Because you have the 6 months time frame between January and then the likelihood of it's happening.
Yes, exactly.
Unless they come back and say, hey, there is a different way of doing it. I can cut down my cycle time into 3 months.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Different way of doing it. But you're kind of talking about at that point, the first quarter, using the catering example, we would do some lead indicator metrics where, hey, if you have 150 conversations, we believe you can get half of those to convert to, catering. If they fall into these parameters, great. Go have 150 of those conversations in January, to have another 150 in February, another 150 in March. And then we know that you're on track for us to have a fantastic second half. But we have to answer the question, how are we going to make up the income or hit our numbers in the first 2 quarters while we're waiting on the catering to come in, and you put that focus on the curbside or whatever the case is with that.
See, but Drew, you bring a very, very interesting point. See, the general business, the 100% of the business, what they were doing year prior to, that is always going to take care of them in the first quarter and second quarter because they're repeating what has worked already. You're
right.
So that is taking care of it. And the assumption is only for the new 20% of the business.
Yeah.
Unless they're in a different environment and a different market, which is completely volatile. We'll get into that in a few minutes, but I really want you to go back. So frequently discussed. So you're getting the feedback loop and everything else to make sure we can do course correction. Then they're ambitious goals so that people are really motivated. Then they're very, very specific in metrics and timelines. And the last piece of the fast is transparency. Every single person should understand for themselves and for the peers. Because one of the things we have studied in some of the larger corporations was when they're transparent, teams look at other teams' goals because they're always having that competitive spirit. We as human beings are always competitive. We want to go back and do the best. So if we see somebody else's progress, we try to bring in that extra time, energy, motivation, discretionary effort, whatever you want to call it, to go put into that to reach your goals.
Yeah.
And that is how the fast goal comes. So the SMART goals are very, very specific, opportunity for sandbagging, building year over year. Now comes the fast goals, which are much more dynamic.
Okay, so when I think of fast goals, and this might just be my misinterpretation of it, but I think of a compressed timeline as well. So what I found, I said I have my own method. It would be what I would call more of a fast goal method using that acronym, which talked about frequently discussed, ambitious, specific, transparent, within my own business. And I put like a 90-day focus on it. And for me, that it's easy to frequently talk about the same thing for 90 days. Now, this is my brain. I might have adult ADD. I don't know. But but I focus on that for 90 days. And then now there's the next 90-day goal that gets triggered when that's done. and I put that into practice. That's what I did with my book. I had 90 days to finish the book, 90 days to market the book, and then, you know, it goes to market. And so is fast goals have a timeline associated with it, or is that just my interpretation of it?
So your goal is more initiative focused. When you have a 90-day sprint, there are people call it 90-day sprint. Some people call it 100-day bullet train. There are different names for it. Bullet train, you just go through it. So those are the kind of situations where you are really in an emergency, or you have something that you want to go back and deliver. There is a lot of pressure and time, but you cannot have every single initiative on that timeline.
Okay. Yeah.
So special projects, special initiatives, we always want to have that.
Okay.
So from a fast goal perspective, it has to be aligned to the strategy, but it has to be going back and focused on the environment we are working on. So you said 90 days, right? But the environment might be so fast changing that you might have to change direction in a month.
Okay.
Like I go back and always talk about the mortgage industry in 2008 and 9, when the whole mortgage industry went back. Bad loans.
Yeah.
So I remember one example from one Fortune 10 company. In the first 2 months, they realized that they're going to take a big loss.
Yeah.
So they pushed for it. And basically, they sold their complete portfolio for a loss of $300 million. It's a big company. So I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah.
Within the first 2 months, they were fast. They got the metrics. They realized it. They wanted to sell it off, and they sold it. And the company who bought it from them, they thought, because they were going on a SMART goal or some other goals, they thought it was a better buy, and they took on the risk for the $300 million.
And there were those
9 months
junk bonds.
Exactly. And they were out of business 12 months later.
Wow.
They no longer exist after that.
Yeah.
So it is something, basically, the way I look at it is one business was on the SMART goals, basically, and one was on the fast goals. And this is what it is. So these people responded within the couple of months.
Okay. And even looking, I mean, we don't even have to go back to 08, 09. If you look at 2022, I was working with a mortgage company, and, you know, the interest rates doubled in 2022 from where they started at around 3%. They're at 6% by the end of the year.
Yes.
So the goals, I did a strategic planning session with them at the beginning of the year. But once we hit about February, every month they were modifying the strategy and the plan. They were going in there saying, okay, we have to tweak this. We have to modify this. We have to do this. We have to make these moves and make these decisions so that we can still be in existence in 2023 and beyond, right? And so they made those moves in more of a lean, really almost an entrepreneurial. Is that, I feel like you lean towards the fast goal model for yourself. Is that accurate? And is that because of the entrepreneurial nature of how you run your business? You've got to be nimble, you've got to move, you got to change, you got to modify. So
basically, I'm going to introduce a new term here to explain that piece of it. I call it VUCA, VUCA.
Yes.
And I like fast goals. I like a combination of fast goals and OKRs.
Okay.
And the reason is, we as in a business, we are in a VUCA world.
Yes.
And what does VUCA mean? Basically, volatility. The first thing is there is a huge range of volatility in the market. Like you just said, in the mortgage company, the interest rates doubled.
Yeah, that's extremely volatile. It's the first time it's ever happened in history, as far as I know, is doubling in 1 year's time.
So there, even my 100 days will be too slow. So I need to go back and work on a daily, weekly basis to understand where it is moving and what are the appropriate actions I need to take.
Yeah.
And that is the increased rate of change, right? The volatility piece of it. And the second piece of it is, when it is so volatile, the future is very unclear, which is uncertainty. It brings a lot of uncertainty because it's ups and downs.
Yeah, we have that in the world. There's a war going on the other side of the world from us and Russia and Ukraine. And so you've got oil, you've got all the wheat that is grown there that the world depends upon. We're so dependent upon one another. You've got COVID lockdowns in China that are slowing down production, and people talking about moving production to India moving forward. And so there's all these very uncertain times that we're living in, and which brings you into the C,
Complexity. That is
Yeah.
what you're talking about. What you just
Mhm.
mentioned about is the complexity. There are multiple key decision factors we need to be aware of. So you talk about volatility, you talk about
Mhm.
uncertainty, and the complexity is happening in this world.
Yeah.
And the fourth piece of it is the ambiguity, because there is no right or wrong answer. It all
Mhm.
goes with your perception and what you really understand.
Yeah.
Because some companies freeze when there is ambiguity.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who survive and grow. They take the assumptions, they feel comfortable with it, and they're marching forward. Those are the
Mhm.
people who really are successful because they're frequently discussing those and managing this VUCA piece of it. And
Yeah.
that's the reason why I really like the fast goals. And what I tell people is VUCA forces us to shift from smart to fast goals.
I like it. Well, and I think about whatever process, and I actually I heard this from Elon Musk. He said, if it's always taken you, whatever, 6 months to manufacture, I don't even know, this doesn't even make sense, but let's say it takes you 6 months to manufacture a Tesla. I hope it doesn't. How can we do it in 3 months?
Yes.
Is what you have to ask yourself, and so whatever it is that you do, you mentioned that earlier with the sales cycle. So the sales cycle takes 6 months. Is that because we only reach out once a month to check back, or every 2 weeks? What if we shorten that to once a week? We check back. Is that going to shorten and make the timeline shorten into 3 months instead of 6 months? And kind of maybe a stop in physically to a place of business to speak with them face to face and come to a deal right then and there. Maybe that will shorten the timeline on what you're doing. The timeline is just the timeline because that's how somebody did it and wrote down that that's how they did it, right? We can modify, and we have to modify the timelines that we work in because of the environment that we find ourselves in. You think about from a news perspective, the news cycle, if I mean, goodness, I'll just, once again, we're in the end of January in 2023. What, a month or two ago, maybe not even that long ago, everybody was talking about Twitter and Elon Musk and, all this kind of stuff. And is he a good businessman? Oh, he's evil for letting all these people go. Now you look, and all of big tech is letting people go.
Exactly.
As many people as him or more, right? The sales cycle moves, not the sales cycle, the news cycle moves on. And the same thing is true. Why? Because it's happening so fast. Everything's happening quickly in the environment that we find ourselves in. And so we as business leaders, entrepreneurs, have to be able to move and be nimble and make changes with our teams, with our organizations, and based on the environment that we find ourselves in. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly. And that is the reason why frequently discussed that fast goals piece of it, and why I suggest as an entrepreneur, we are always in a growing environment. We are always in change. We are always trying to go back and expand and grow, and we have different set of customers we are going after. So the frequently discussed piece of it. So like the tech example is a great example.
Yeah.
They are seeing and forecasting a lot of it based on what information they're already getting.
Yeah.
So Elon Musk might have seen something very fast, and he acted very fast based on his assumptions. And then the big tech is acting right now.
Yeah.
So in the next 2-3 months, we don't know if the banks are going to go do that and any other industry is going to do that. The way I predict, and again, I'm no expert or an economist, but I think basically financial services and the auto industries will be following in the next 2 to 3 months. They will be looking at that indicators and everything else, and they will start making. But the biggest part of it is understanding, because they're going after the fast goals.
Yeah.
They are making changes based on what is happening. Right or wrong, I cannot say that. But from their assumptions and from their business models and from their strategies, they are working towards their goals. That is the reason why the fast goals make so much of a difference. And now go to the third piece of it, which is the OKRs, right? So if you look at it from an OKRs, for me, fast goals and OKRs are very, very close.
Okay.
And I don't know where the fast OKRs came from, but in my mind, I like the fast goals from a strategy perspective of goal setting.
Okay.
But when I'm executing on those, I really like my OKRs.
Okay. So the fast goal is almost like the philosophy of goal setting.
Yes.
And then the OKRs are really the strategy or the execution piece of the goal setting. And really, I should have said this on the front end. If you're an entrepreneur out there, why do you care about goals? Well, as an entrepreneur, you're not only responsible for executing on the goals, you're responsible with your team, or if you're alone out there starting a business, getting something going. I'm working, as you know, Raj, on this app,
Sure.
trying to get this app off the ground. And there's nobody telling me what goals to set. If you're starting something new, something from nothing, there's nobody forcing you or mandating you to hit a certain goal. You have to set those goals for yourself. And so I did a 100-day sprint on myself. I want to survey 100 businesses in this industry that I'm looking at to potentially develop an app, because I want to find out. Someone told me that had been involved with some startups. They said, figure out really fast if your product is going to be viable. You know,
Yes.
if there's actually a market for it, as fast as you can, get to failure and
Yes.
find out. And if you can get a proof of concept going early on and find out that there is a market for what you're looking for, great. Now invest some money into it. So, but that's something I had to set. Those are conversations I've had over the last 20 years. And I put this together, a goal for myself. So entrepreneurs listening to this, if you're side hustling your way into your own business, whatever the case is, you've got to set these goals for yourself. You've got to put pressure on yourself. Be ambitious with those goals. What are you trying to do over the next 100 days? I hope that when people are done, they sit down and they set some fast goals or some OKRs for their own self, and really try to move the needle in their organization and hit this year running, or whenever you listen to this podcast. Okay, I'm off my soapbox, Raj.
Drew, but again,
jump
you
in
bring
there.
up a very, very, very valuable point. So if you go back and look at it, what you just mentioned, you're doing this thing, right? So you are following the FAST policy here.
Yeah.
And the one metric you did is, I need validation before I do anything else.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of business experience and everything else. You do this for a living, so it comes naturally to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I would put yourself in the shoes of a startup, somebody who's a very good programmer, who has got brilliant programming skills.
Yeah.
They hear this and they look at it and say, you know what, I can build one of the best technical programs and people will come.
Mm-mm.
So they might go back and do that and come up with a great app or whatever it comes on. But they're not getting the instantaneous feedback. So they might go off on a tangent, assuming that things will come. And that's the reason why, if you look at the tech industry, there are a lot of successful companies. But the way I look at it is, behind every successful company, there are at least 10 other unsuccessful companies with their own software and everything else.
Absolutely. Or more. Right?
Or more.
That,
yes, I don't have the data.
Yeah. And you bring such a good idea so often, because what I'm doing is I'm talking to independent restaurant owners right now, and I'm having all these conversations, and the mindset is, if I build it, they will come. It's the old E-myth, right? That someone told me that I make really good food and I should start a restaurant. So I did. Exactly. But I didn't think about, how am I going to market this? Or am I in the right neighborhood for people that like this kind of food that I make? You know, just because the building was on sale, you got a great price on the lease. You know, I was talking to a lady yesterday. She said, we don't do any advertising. We're a Mexican restaurant, and there are 85 other Mexican restaurants right around us. 85. She knew the number. And that's some steep competition. So what are you doing? What's your unique thing? Is there a huge lunch crowd around you that you're going to maximize and you're going to draw a crowd in? Are you on the way home for people, and you're the happy hour stop where people stop on their way home to have a drink and get some appetizers? You know, figure that stuff out, because like you said, if we take it to tech, just because you have this great software doesn't mean that everybody feels like they need it. Even though you might know that they do, they might not think they do. And so now you have to convince people. And then number two, how are you going to market? How are you explaining, or how are you getting the word out about this product? Just because you build this amazing thing doesn't mean other people are going to care at all.
Yes.
And nor should they.
Yes. So, Drew, you bring up a very, very good point, which leads us into the next topic of OKRs.
Yes. So I'm sorry. I keep taking you off on OKRs. Please tell us what OKRs are.
That was a great example you gave, and we can build on that. That was a good segue for OKRs. So if you look at OKRs, OKR is objectives and key result areas.
Objectives and key results. Okay.
So if you go back and look at your own example of the app, let us talk about it and build on that.
Okay.
The objective is to go back and build a profitable app
Yes.
that is going to serve the customers. And the second piece of it is it's going to make money.
Yeah.
So now that is a very, very qualitative statement.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put a metric around that.
Yeah.
Right? You can't put a timeline around that. The objective will always be qualitative.
Okay.
But take it to the next level. And when you go back and say key results, this is where it will be a quantitative. So metric always has to be quantitative, right?
Yeah.
And when you have a quantitative, then you can go back and add a timeline to that.
That's great.
So we go back and say, I want to build an app. So one of the app might be is basically one of the key result area is I want this to be validated by at least 100 individual restaurant owners saying, yes, this is good. I would like it. And you have a timeline for that. So that would be one KR, key result area.
Mm-hmm.
The second one maybe is talking to another 100 people and say, I'm willing to spend X number of dollars for this kind of a service if it helps me to get there. Validation of your financial viability of the product.
Yeah.
The third can be is talking to end customers and saying, hey, there is a special like this coming through, what the purpose of the app is. I am more than willing to go back and utilize that.
Yeah.
So these are all the key result areas that will go back and help you with your objective.
Mm-hmm.
So you have one objective and then generally have between 3 and 5 key result areas. That is the kind of the best practice.
Yeah, no, and I can have these going simultaneously with the different types of people I talk to, because you're right. I mean, I did look up some research on when we talk about my specific app that I'm looking into. It's a bargain app. You know, it's for people who want a bargain. And I looked up the statistics. 53% of Americans want a bargain, but I kind of left it at that. I need to dive into the specific thing. Hey, how much do you utilize a lunch special, or would you utilize a lunch special? Do you go out to eat on a regular basis or somewhat regular? Do you ever go to happy hours? How frequent do you do that? And kind of find out what the gauge is on that to see if the end user, like you mentioned, would be interested in an app like this that would help them more quickly find a place where they can, use the restaurant services.
Yes, okay. Exactly.
So I'm taking notes here, Raj.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. And basically, that's how the OKRs are. And that's the reason why I like the FAST and the OKR combination to work.
Yeah.
And I just want to give a generic example. Everybody knows NFL, National Football League, and we are pretty much 2 more games away from the Super Bowl, which is
tell everybody who your team is, Raj, so they can all go boo in the car when you say it.
I'm a big fan of New England Patriots.
New England Patriots. Okay, it's out there. Everybody knows now. You can't give us a thumbs down because he likes the Patriots. Now, I live in Dallas, Fort Worth area, and so right in between Dallas and Fort Worth is a city called Arlington, and that's actually where the Dallas Cowboys play. Yes. And so you can't live in DFW and not be a Cowboys follower. I'll say that. I'm not like this huge fan, but I'm always aware, and I always get let down by the Cowboys every single year after year, ever since I've lived here. So if Drew, you don't like America's team, go ahead.
Very sorry about that. But again, if you look at it, that's a great example for OKRs.
Okay, go for it.
So if you look at the Dallas Cowboys team, it is the richest franchise in the world.
Yeah.
It's worth over north of $8-9 million, somewhere in that.
Billion, yes.
9 billion, sorry. So if you're talking about $9 billion, but if you look at their result, they have not won a Super Bowl in over 20 years.
Okay, you don't got to rub it in, Raj.
No, I'm not rubbing it. I'm strictly talking from an entrepreneur perspective and from a learning perspective.
Yes.
Because this is an easy example for everybody to follow. So when you are an owner for an NFL team, and they have a general manager who is the highest authority for that.
Yes.
So everybody thinks the general manager's role is to really go back and win a Super Bowl. No, that is not the general manager's job. The general manager's job is to maximize profitability for the owners. So the objective is profitability.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have profit, they can't sustain and produce a good product or service. So
Mhm.
Dallas Cowboys, #1 franchise from a value perspective. So they are doing that, and whoever the general manager is and the owner is, they're doing a fantastic job of it.
Jerry Jones, come on. We all know who he is.
I don't know the general manager. I know the owner piece of it.
I think Jerry's the general manager still.
Oh, okay.
It's either him or his son, Steven. Steven
Okay.
might have taken over, but everybody knows Jerry runs that team.
Exactly. So for him, the objective is there, but now there are two key result areas for them to objectively do that.
Yeah.
One is they need to go back and fill their stands, key result areas. This is very specific.
Yeah.
They have a certain seating capability, and to be a good, profitable one, consistently, they need to go back and fill them over 90%.
Yeah.
That is one metric, key result. And the second one is basically winning the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So irrespective of they winning the Super Bowl, they are filling up the stands. The way I understand, they've been sold out for at least 20 years straight. There was never a single seat going vacant.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
maybe just COVID or something like that. And it's the same thing with the Mavericks with Mark Cuban. Even
Yes.
though they've won one championship in the last 20 years plus, he consistently sells out the stands, which is what you're talking about. There's these two, not necessarily competing goals. They support each other, but you can have the profitability without the championship.
Exactly. So this is the great example. That's the reason why I liked Dallas Cowboys when you said that, because
Yeah.
they're the richest company, profitability, they're very, very high, and they don't have Super Bowls. So
Mhm.
they have two things. Now, if you look at the general manager, there are two key people working for him. One is the head coach,
Yes.
and his responsible or her responsibility is to win the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had of public relations, marketing, whatever title you give them, that person's job is to fill the stands.
Yeah.
So those are the two key result areas from the business level. From a general manager, then he has to direct people. So now let us go back and look at the head coach. The head coach will have his whole goal is Super Bowl. He doesn't care about how many people are coming, profitability.
Not his problem. Yeah.
And he will have his own metrics. And now what will be his things? How is my offense doing? How is my defense doing? How are my special teams doing? How are my new staff doing? How are my scouts doing? Because he's looking at the key results of all of these things that will help him to bring into the key result areas.
Mm-hmm.
So a sample winning Super Bowl team coach might be looking at, you know what, every game I need to have 200 yards of passing. That might be one key result here.
Okay.
I want to have a defense which is at least ranked 1, 2, or 3 in the NFL. Because we know when you have a solid defense and when you're passing 200 yards every game consistently, your probability of success is very high.
Okay.
And then to enable those two, the other part of it is if you have a starting position for you, every time when you're starting the game, you want to be at closer to that. Let us say every starting position goal is 35 yards. So the cover to the basically the goal line is only 65 yards.
Yes.
So the touchdown becomes much faster and easier. So they might have and say punt return always has to be 25 yards so that I'm getting closer. So those are some of the metrics the head coach will be focused.
Yeah.
Then he will have an offense who is working and saying, okay, what can I do to get to the 200? And they will have their own key result areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to have completion rate of 70%. I need to have 20 carries of 10 yards or more, whatever the metric is.
So I call those supporting goals. So there's the overarching goal, and then you break it down further into supporting goals. And then there might even be further supporting goals. To achieve this, we've got to, the kicker has to hit 98% of their, field goals or points after, or whatever the case is. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're looking at is every single goal and every single team player, all of those are aligned in such a way that we reach the biggest goal of the business is to maximize dollars, the value of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And then winning the Super Bowl. The two major goals to support everything, every single thing. So the whole organization is aligned. The players are aligned. The defense is aligned. Special teams is aligned. The marketing team is aligned. The PR team is aligned. Basically, the new staff covering this, the marketing team, anything they're doing, all of those are aligned.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes in a SMART goal, you have all the departments working and they have goals. But if they are in silos and they're not aligned, everybody hits their goals, but the organization has not hit their goal. That is where the alignment of vision and strategy becomes very important.
Okay.
So the reason I really like the OKRs is it is comfortable with the fast goals, and the whole organization is aligned.
Yeah, definitely.
And what I tell people and what I go back and suggest to all my organizations is, as an organization, never have more than 3 to 5 key initiatives, especially entrepreneurs who are in their growth stage and they're just growing.
Yeah.
I'm really referring to the companies who are less than 500 employees, entrepreneurs, small business owners and staff, because that is where I focus predominantly. And I've seen a lot of success when they have no more than 3 to 5 OKRs. So 3 to 5 objectives, and each objective has about 3 to 5 key result areas.
Okay.
And once you have that combination of the 20 things that we need to work on, everybody knows what they're working on. Everybody knows everything is aligned. Now you can be transparent because they know whatever they're contributing affects the other team, and whatever is working on the other team affects them.
Yeah.
So they're more open to that. They're more for collaboration, more for helping each other out and moving and marching in the right direction.
And that's really where you can hit those larger goals, is when you have a team and you have a team working together towards that one goal, the alignment. There's power and it's a multiplying effect. I really believe when I've worked with these organizations that have, you know, a leadership team of 8 or 10, and then they have maybe 100, 150 employees. My goodness, you can do so much with a team like that if they're in alignment and go in the same direction. And it's frequently discussed. They know where they're going. They know who is doing what by when, all those items. I think all we need you to do, since we are an international audience here, Raj, we need you to take that football example and turn it into a cricket example if you can, and do the whole thing over again with cricket. No, I'm just joking.
It's relatively easy, right? If you go back and look at it from the cricket, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Whoever is the owner, the championship, basically, one is revenue and one is championship.
Yeah, same thing. No matter what your favorite sport is,
exactly.
You know, what we call soccer here, football around the world, it's the same thing in every one of those franchises as well. They want to win their league championship.
Yes.
And they want to maximize profits. Simple.
Exactly. Very, very simple. And again, once the people start understanding the OKRs, people think they're very complicated, but once you understand it, it is relatively easy to go back and implement them.
Well, here's a great question for everybody listening to ask themselves. Does your team, I'm not even asking outside people, Raj, you and I, as far as I know, we've never been in the NFL. I can speak for myself. We've never played in the NFL. We've never owned an NFL team. I've never consulted or trained with an NFL team. I don't know if you have.
No.
Okay. So we haven't done those, but we know what their objectives are as an organization.
Yes.
It's that clear. It's that transparent. The question I have for everybody listening is, do your employees understand what the key objectives or what the priorities of your organization are? If not, then as a leader, you've fallen short. You failed to clearly articulate or taken the time to sit down and define what are those objectives. And you can't say we have 23 of them, because then there's no priority there.
Exactly.
You've got to have 1, 2, maybe 3, like you said, priorities, where we're going, what we're trying to do, objectives for this year, where we're trying to go as an organization, and then everybody can do their part to support those 3 main items. And if you can't answer absolutely yes, all of my people can define that, then you need to have a meeting, you need to define these, and you need to make sure everybody's on the same page with them, because that alone in and of itself, whether you bring somebody like Raj in or not to help your organization, it doesn't matter. You can do that right now for your organization. And I promise you, by the end of the year, you're going to be in a better position than you are right now if you just get clear on what those objectives are.
And Drew, I just want to add one more thing. If they have not, that is the first step, the most critical step.
Yeah.
And the second step is create a cadence of communicating with the team, the fast discussions. Do it once a month for a minimum.
Okay.
Because we are in a kind of an VUCA environment right now, at least in the US, with the recession, with the high interest rates and everything, with the unemployment and the layoffs and everything else. There is a lot of VUCA environment right now.
Yeah.
So the entrepreneurs, the small business owners, first they need to define what they want to accomplish, and at least a minimum every 4 weeks, touch base with their critical leaders and have the discussion about that. Because that way, whenever they have the frequent discussions, they're providing guidance for key decision making, keeps employee focused on what matters most, links performance feedback to concrete goals, and evaluates progress and all the course corrections we need to make.
I love it. I love it. This is great. Okay, so you talked about what you like to do and what you maybe recommend or lead your clients into, which is a fast, what I'll call fast philosophy, but with on the execution side of things, you use the OKRs, objective and key results. What else is there? Is there anything else? I think we understand the types of goals, goal setting models that we could follow. We've heard what you would do. We've talked about what organizations could do. Right now, after listening to this this podcast, is there anything else that you want to share, communicate to the listeners out there on this topic of goal setting before we call it quits today?
Yeah. So I think the one thing I really want to emphasize, we already touched, is the cadence of communication.
Okay.
The cadence of communication, and make it formal, not informal. So everybody has to be very, very serious about it. Everybody has to do their part. They have to keep their eyes and ears open, really bring the information from the field into the organization. So every single person is touching the customer or touching the process differently. And each one brings a different perspective. So they have to be bringing all the information frequently and be very, very candid and open in the communication in the cadence meeting. That is what I would say would be the second piece of it for their success.
I love it. And, you know, you talk about formal. I absolutely believe it has to be formal, not impromptu meetings. Oh, I'll just catch them in passing, because then people aren't prepared and they aren't prepared for the meeting. I am encouraging all of my clients. I do more leadership coaching with the folks that I work with. I'm encouraging them all to, if they're not doing them, bring back the one-on-ones. I am a big believer in one-on-ones. I like if you can do weekly one-on-ones with your direct reports. I think they're powerful. I think they give an opportunity to reset the priority, because priorities, like you mentioned, they change. So if there's a shift in the environment that you're in and you have to modify your approach, I know a big thing with some of the organizations I was working with is they were doing a lot of in-house delivery. They realized that, and they were pushing it, they realized that it wasn't as profitable as other avenues within the organization. So they could, yes, they could increase the top line revenue, but they weren't increasing profitability at all. And so if profitability is the goal, then we need to make this shift and this change in strategy. Well, if you're only having meetings once every 3 months with someone that reports to you, they're operating out of old information. And they don't know how to lead the people that they work with, the frontline employees, on a regular basis. So I'm a big believer in the regular cadence of the meetings, because once again, it's an opportunity to make sure that you're on the same page, the priorities are the same, and we're in alignment. Then there's no frustration with, what do you mean you've been working on that for the last 6 weeks? You know, I changed my mind. I sent you a text, or I sent you an email one time, one day. Sorry, the text or the Slack or whatever you're using, it's not the same as sitting across from somebody and really being able to hash out or communicate what it is, or sitting across in a Zoom meeting like this, what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And even if it's 15 minutes a week, I think it's powerful to have those frequent meetings so that you can be on the same page.
Yes. And Drew, I just want to add one statement. Whenever you see, most of the time, people don't have the time to do that. Because they're really having too many direct reports.
Okay.
And the second part of it is they really don't set up the cadence and the content discussion. So the agenda piece of it, everybody says agenda, which is an overused word, but what do you want to accomplish from that 15 minutes, 30 minutes? So what I saw as a best practice is anybody who has more than 6 direct reports, they need to create and move some people away.
Okay.
So
I was
that
going to
was
ask
my
you your number. Six is the number.
six.
Okay.
I like six. Maximum I can push to eight, but I really don't like that because six people, every day you can set up 1 or 2 meetings and you're comfortable with that. It'll take you half hour, 1 hour. And second, make sure the expectation is right. When you have a meeting, go back and say, hey, these are the 2 or 3 topics we want to talk on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And once we do that and everybody gets into the habit of it, people are prepared. They do their homework, they come with the right information.
Yeah.
And really have a great, because people like meetings, but they don't like unplanned meetings or meetings which don't provide value for them.
Yeah.
So each of the sessions has to be value add.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want people to hear me, oh, Drew's all about filling your day with meetings. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Yes.
I'm saying do what you have to do to make sure that your team is running in the direction you want them to run in, because you might say, oh, I only have 1 meeting a month. Great. Are your efforts scattered? Because you can do that shotgun approach with all the pellets, or you can say, look, we're shooting at the same target, trying to go the same direction. We're in alignment and we hit our targets. Yes, we have a few more meetings, but they're purposeful. And to your point about preparing, it's like public speaking. I do public speaking. I've been doing it for years. And I know that when I have a topic that I am thinking about for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it gives my brain time to really think about that topic and put in illustrations to better communicate it and make it easier to understand. And the same thing is true if you can give some lead time to your team members on what it is you're trying to accomplish in those meetings and what topics you want to discuss. Now, even when they're sleeping, their brain is kind of doing some calculations and thinking about it. They're taking a shower, they're driving to work. They're focused on, okay, how can I answer this question best when I'm meeting with the person that leads me? And so, yeah, all those things, I think they're great. We need to have a whole nother session on how to communicate within the organization and how to communicate vision and strategy and have direct report meetings and all that, because I think there's so much to talk about there and it's a lost art.
Yeah, no, definitely. There is a good communication plan organizations need to have. So one of the things we do is as soon as the strategy session and the OKRs are defined for the year, we come up with a communication plan, one for the leadership team and one for all employees. And that way the entrepreneurs really know what cadence is going on with their leadership team and what cadence of communication is going with their employees. Because unless they go back and take their OKRs and define those and getting the frequent information back and forth, and because you might be changing directions every 3 weeks, 4 weeks because of what is happening. But that has to be communicated. If not, people will be like deer in front of a headlight, right?
Exactly. They could waste an entire day making sales calls to a target client that you've already determined is not interested in your services. And now they've just spent 8 hours calling people and getting no's, getting discouraged when they could have moved and said, hey, this is the new, avatar that we're after for our ideal client.
Exactly.
Perfect. Awesome. Wow. That was fantastic. I think there's a ton of value in there with setting those goals. You've got the SMART goals, kind of the old school way. Maybe it's worked for you. Hey, we're just saying, why don't you try something new? Maybe you need to freshen up. I know some people, you've had the same meeting for a long time. Your team gets bored because they need something fresh. So, you can change the way you do a meeting. You can change things around. Maybe look at these fast goals, look at some OKRs and change your mindset and maybe spark some energy within your team. Talk about, hey, there's this new environment that we're working in. I know you've been experiencing it. I want you to know that I understand that that's what we're working in. You can make a connection with your team, but we hope that you put these things into practice. We've added value to you today. And with that, thank you so much for listening in on the Raj and Drew Show for Entrepreneurs. Make sure you share this with a friend. Let them know about it. Give them the information they need so they can be successful. And we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you very much for listening. And if there is anything I or Drew can help you, always feel free to contact us. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on the website, wherever you are. But just let us know if there is anything, if there is a topic of interest that you would like us to talk about. Definitely, we are open to that.
Perfect. Awesome. That's a wrap.
Okay. Happy goal setting.
I love it.